In 2021, I was applying to tenure track assistant professor jobs from my apartment in Spain. Now, because of the COVID, what happened was all the job interviews and job talks happened through Zoom, and I really bombed them. I mean, I did so badly on those that there was no chance that I would be getting a job. What happened was when I was preparing for my in-person presentations, I actually could read the room. I could see where people were not following me. I could see their body language. I could read the room that this is the point they have understood or not understood well. But when I was presenting on Zoom, I was mostly presenting to blank screens or to myself. So what happened was that the technology changed my social environment, my social behavior. And why I'm telling you this is that there is a new study out which shows the iPhone effect that caught my attention. The study actually shows that the introduction of iPhone in the US led to a decline in the fertility rates. Now, why this is interesting is because iPhone was a natural experiment, the introduction of iPhone. If you don't know, iPhone was exclusively marketed by one carrier in the US for the first 3 or 3.5 years. That was AT&T. So in other words, what you had to do to get an iPhone is basically get a contract with AT&T, and then you would be able to get an iPhone. And this study looked at counties which had more than 90% of mobile broadband access through AT&T and compared it to counties that had less than 10% access to mobile broadband. And of course, they controlled for the demographic nature as well. So now we have a comparison between counties where people have access to mobile broadband and smartphones versus the counties where people do not have access to mobile broadband and smartphones. What they found was that actually iPhone explains somewhere between 33 to 52% of the decline in the fertility rates in the US. Now keep in mind, we are talking about 2007, 2008. That is when iPhone was introduced in the US as well. And this was also the time of an economic depression. So nationally, the rates were declining, the fertility rates, but most of the time we've understood these declining fertility rates as an economic effect. What this study shows is almost 33 to 52% of that can be explained through iPhone. Now, why is that? The researchers looked at three mechanisms. First, the introduction of iPhone reduced the in-person interactions. People were now interacting less in person. The second mechanism they checked was that people were actually now able to search about contraceptive methods on their hand, on their screen. So now they don't even have to go to their laptop or desktop to search information about contraception methods. And finally, the third mechanism they found out was people were actually browsing more pornographic material online. And this also explains why the fertility rate was less among women in all the ages, but it was most pronounced among women less than 25 years of age. Now, why I'm telling you this is that in India, we've seen the total fertility rate decline in the last 2 years. Now it is at roughly 1.9. What that means is, on average, in a lifetime, a woman is likely to have slightly less than 2 kids. And the stable total fertility rate should be somewhere around 2.1 so that we can replace the population. If it is less than 2.1, this was likely to lead to what we are seeing in the West already. For instance, I am in the Netherlands and the TFR here is 1.4. What that means is population is getting older and it's not getting replaced naturally. In Delhi, they found that the TFR is actually lower than the Netherlands of 1.2. In other words, in urban areas, the TFR in India has gone drastically down. Only in 6 states, the TFR is higher than 2.1. Now, of course, this is problematic, but most of the policy thinks of this as either we need to find ways so that people have more children, in other words, pro-natalistic policies, and we see that in some of the states already where you're given incentives to have more children. Or the second policy initiative is usually on the productivity side, since the young population will be burdened more with taking care of population that is growing older. So whether it is about childcare costs or about flexible work environments, those are the usual policy implications, and policymakers think on those terms. What they don't think at all is how technology is reshaping our social behavior. What they don't understand is how the introduction of mobile phones, smartphones particularly, have changed our social behavior. It's changed how we interact with people in person. It's changed how we argue and accept others' point of view. We see this on social media all the time. Have you ever seen people agreeing on social media saying, you know what, you are right and I was wrong? This almost never happens. Good luck finding a partner who you will always be fighting with and never say, I'm sorry. In other words, smartphones have changed our social behavior. We interact or message through WhatsApp. We connect first through Facebook or Instagram. We are following a lot of influencers, and it is giving us a distorted sense of social reality that this is how the world works, while the influencers are not showing you the real picture. They are showing you a very curated picture of their social life. And all these things actually are changing our social behavior, and no wonder in urban areas people are feeling more lonely. And this is a problem because we've not understood how in-person social interaction works. This is one of the issues that we've overlooked in our understanding of lower TFR. What we are not understanding is how technology has reshaped our social behavior as well, that we as a society are becoming less intimate and we are less willing to have kids in an environment which is becoming very polarized. And I've discussed this in another video, that how as a society the effective polarization is leading to problems, especially pronounced in democracies. So we really need to think about how smartphones have affected our birth rate as well. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will see you next time with another interesting piece of research.